When a tragedy hits, the normal forward momentum of a life falters. But when those losses compound, that momentum can come to a dead stop. For Keisha Smith, the wait was specific and relentless. She lost both her father and her son within the same 12-month period. This creates what psychologists describe as a vacuum of grief. The brain begins to operate under the assumption that the world is governed strictly by subtraction, that every coming day will only involve more taking. Breaking out of that cycle requires a radical shift in environment, because when the internal world feels this heavy, a simple routine feels like an impossible climb. Keisha attempted to reclaim some sense of agency by executing a trip she had planned a year earlier with her boyfriend and her brother. They put significant physical distance between themselves and their home in Pennsylvania, driving all the way to the landscape of Arkansas. They weren't looking for a traditional resort or a place to relax. They chose a state park that requires visitors to spend their days performing manual labor in the dirt. This wasn't about leisure. It was about forcing a physical distraction that was loud enough to compete with the grief they carried. They arrived at Crater of Diamonds State Park, one of the few places on Earth where the public is invited to search for gems and keep what they find. Finding anything requires hours of repetitive, grueling work, sifting and sorting through buckets of mud and gravel under the sun. The math is unforgiving. While hundreds of thousands visit every year, only a tiny fraction of a percent walk away with a gemstone. Finding a high-clarity white diamond over 3 carats is a statistical rarity most will never see in a lifetime of digging. Keisha arrived at this field after a year where the odds had already been stacked against her in the most painful ways possible. Uncovering a major stone here is more than a reward for effort. It sits at the absolute outer edge of the park's statistical history. Then it happened. Buried in the mud was a 3.09-carat white diamond. It was large, heavy, and possessed a clarity that made it immediately distinguishable from the surrounding gravel. In that moment, the exhaustion of the past 12 months was met by an event as improbable as her losses, but in the opposite direction. Keisha described the discovery not as a financial win, but as an emotional release, a sudden countersignal to a year that had offered very little reason for hope. A diamond is just a mineral. It cannot bring back a father or a son, and it doesn't change the facts of what happened over the last year. However, unexpected events can act as a circuit breaker for a cycle of grief. They introduce a new variable into a mind that has grown used to expecting only the worst. By finding something so rare and so beautiful in the dirt, Keisha was presented with physical proof that the universe was still capable of providing something positive. That realization triggered a wave of release, the first time in a year that the weight of her grief was met with the light of a genuine surprise. It is a reminder of the limits of human control. Keisha planned the trip to find peace, but the actual catalyst for her healing was a stone she couldn't have known was there. The gemstone remains with her now, not just as an asset, but as a physical anchor for the hope she rediscovered in Arkansas. Her story suggests that while we cannot always navigate our way out of the dark through planning alone, we can choose to keep moving. Healing often begins the moment we are reminded that a world capable of taking so much can still occasionally offer us something back.